You know how it starts. It's almost always the same. You're just, I don't know, scrolling through your phone, looking at Instagram or something, and a message pops up.
Uh-huh. And it's a name you haven't seen in a while.
Exactly. It's a name you recognize, but not, from your day-to-day life. Maybe it's someone from high school biology class 10 years ago, or a distant cousin you only see at weddings.
The classic blast from the past.
Right. And the message, it's so friendly. It's really enthusiastic. There are always a ton of emojis, sparkles, rocket ships, the ones. It starts with something like, "Hey, hun," or "Long time no see."
And you think, oh, that's nice of them to reach out.
Yeah, you think they want to catch up. But then the pivot. There's always a pivot.
There's always a pivot.
Yeah.
The small talk is just the runway for the actual pitch.
And suddenly it's not about your job or your family anymore. It's about a business opportunity. They've found this amazing way to achieve financial independence.
And they want to share it with you. They want to help you live the lifestyle you deserve.
Yes, you can be your own boss. You can retire in your 30s. It's this incredible script.
It is a script.
Yeah.
And it's one that has been rehearsed and repeated millions and millions of times all over the world. It plays on these very deep, very universal desires. Who doesn't want financial freedom?
Of course. Who doesn't want to be their own boss?
Exactly. But what they're pitching, it's almost never just the product. They are pitching a dream.
And so today, we are going to look past that pitch. We're going to look past the shiny Instagram posts, the cars they supposedly bought, the motivational quotes. We are doing a deep dive into the world of multi-level marketing.
You probably know it as MLM.
Right, MLM. Or maybe you've heard it called network marketing or interactive distribution or even referral marketing. They have a lot of names.
They do. And if you talk to the critics, and believe me, there is a very loud, very data-driven community of critics, you'll hear it called something else entirely.
Which is?
Pyramid selling.
And that's really the big question we're trying to tackle today, isn't it? Is this a legitimate path to, being an entrepreneur? Is it a misunderstood business model that actually empowers people?
Or is it just a pyramid scheme with a much better PR department?
It feels like a complicated question, but I think you're right. The answer has to be in the data.
It is.
Yeah.
It's all in the data. We have a huge stack of sources for this one. We're going to be looking at rulings from the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, right here in the U.S. We're going to look at some statistical studies on income that are, frankly, shocking.
And we're going global, too. We're looking at outright bans in China and even religious decrees about it in Saudi Arabia.
We are. We're covering the mechanics, the math, the law, and the culture that surrounds this entire industry.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Let's unpack this. What exactly is multi-level marketing? How is it different from just, getting a normal sales job?
That's the perfect place to start. To really get the controversy, you have to understand the structure. At its very core, an MLM is a strategy where a company uses a non-salaried workforce to sell its products or services.
Okay, non-salaried workforce. That's a very polite way of saying they don't get a regular paycheck.
They do not. They are not employees. That is a critical point. They are independent contractors. You'll hear them called all sorts of things: distributors, associates, independent business owners, affiliates.
But at the end of the day, it means no guaranteed hourly wage, no benefits.
No benefits. You eat what you kill, so to speak. Your income is entirely based on performance.
Which, to be fair, isn't that unusual for some sales jobs, right? Real estate agents work on commission. Car salespeople often work on commission.
That's absolutely true. But here is the critical fundamental distinction. In a typical MLM, there are two separate ways to make money. Two revenue streams. And the way these two streams interact, that's what makes it multi-level.
Okay, so what's the first stream?
The first stream is simple sales commissions. This is the part everyone understands.
So the company makes, say, vitamins. I buy a box of vitamins from them at a wholesale price. I turn around and sell it to my neighbor for the retail price. I keep the difference.
Exactly. That's the direct selling part of it. It's the classic Avon lady model from back in the day. It's the Tupperware party from the 1950s. If the business stopped right there, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
But it doesn't stop there.
It does not, because then you have the second revenue stream, recruitment commissions.
This is where the downline comes into play.
This is where the downline comes in. You are not just incentivized to sell the product. You are incentivized, and often heavily incentivized, to recruit other people to join the company as distributors under you.
So I sign up my friend Jane.
And when you recruit Jane, she becomes part of your downline. Now, you earn a percentage of all of Jane's sales, but it goes deeper. When Jane recruits her friend Bob, Bob is now in your downline too.
Even though I've never met Bob.
You've never met him, but you get a piece of his sales. And when Bob recruits Steve and Steve recruits Mary, you get a small piece of all of it.
So you end up with this expanding triangle of people underneath you.
You end up with a pyramid-shaped structure. Yes, the compensation flows up. The person at the top earns a small percentage of the total sales volume generated by the entire organization below them. And this creates something that researchers call an incentive shift.
An incentive shift. Okay, break that down for me. What's shifting?
Well, just think about it logically. You only have so many hours in a day, right? There are only so many boxes of vitamins you can personally sell to your friends and your family and your neighbors. Your personal sales are finite. They're limited by your own time and energy.
Sure. I can only knock on so many doors.
But your recruitment potential, in theory, that's exponential. If you can build a massive team of hundreds or even thousands of people, well, then you can earn money while you sleep.
That's the passive income dream they're always selling. Make money while you're on the beach.
That's the pitch, 100%. So while the company's official line is that the business is about selling great products, the compensation plan, the math that actually determines how big your check is telling you something different. It's telling you to focus on recruiting.
So you stop trying to find customers for the shampoo.
And you start trying to find other sellers of the shampoo.
The incentive literally shifts from selling a product to selling the business of selling a product.
Precisely. And that creates a really fundamental and, I think, bizarre conflict of interest. Think about it. If you own a successful coffee shop on a street corner, the last thing you want to do is open another coffee shop right next door and teach the new owner your secret recipe.
You'd be creating your own direct competition.
Of course. But in an MLM, that is exactly what you are incentivized to do. You are constantly turning your potential customers into your direct competitors.
Wow, I never thought of it that way. You are actively cannibalizing your own local market.
You are. And you're doing it in the hopes that the small percentage you earn from their sales volume will outweigh the sales you've lost by turning them into a competitor.
That feels like a very risky bet.
It's a huge bet. And that brings us right to the next big topic, the opportunity versus the cold, hard math. Because when you get that hey hun message, they almost never lead with the product.
No, you're right. They don't send you a brochure about the ingredients in the protein shake.
Not at all. They lead with the opportunity. It's always about the lifestyle, financial freedom, time freedom, retire your husband.
There was a former business professor, a guy named Roland Witzel, who spent something like 40 years researching this industry.
He did, and he had a really powerful insight. He said that in most MLMs, the products themselves are often, and this is his word, peripheral. They're just the vehicle.
They're almost an afterthought.
An afterthought. The real product being sold is the opportunity itself. And he argued that the motivational force that drives this entire multi-billion-dollar industry is false hope.
False hope. That's a pretty damning phrase.
It is. But we have some numbers here that, well, they seem to back it up. We have access to a huge study that looked at over 350 different MLM companies, mostly here in the United States.
And what did that study find?
It's a stark finding. The study concluded that at least 99% of all recruits lose money.
I want to pause on that for a second because that number is just, it's hard to process. We're not saying 99% don't get rich. We're not saying 99% just make minimum wage. You're saying 99% lose money.
They end up with less money in their bank account than when they started. They operate at a net loss.
How is that even possible? How can a business model survive if 99% of its participants are failing?
That's the paradox, isn't it? The model survives because they're failing. The failure of the 99% at the bottom is what funds the massive success of the 1% at the top.
So it's a transfer of wealth.
It is a massive upward transfer of wealth. In a pyramid-shaped compensation plan, money has to flow up. For that person at the very top to be posing with that giant oversized check on Instagram, thousands and thousands of people at the bottom have to be buying those starter kits, paying for the training seminars, and purchasing their monthly inventory quota.
The bottom of the pyramid is literally subsidizing the top.
That's a perfect way to put it. And if we drill down into some of the specific studies, the numbers get even more, well, more grim. There's a very famous analysis by a researcher named John Taylor. He's a huge figure in this field.
Right.
He spent years analyzing the compensation plans and the official income disclosure statements of hundreds of these companies. His calculation was that the loss rate for people who invest in these companies is 99.7%.
99.7%. That's statistically everyone. If you just round to the nearest whole number, you get a 100% failure rate.
It is a shocking, shocking number. And to try to put it in perspective, the skeptic Brian Dunning made a comparison that I think really helps it land. He compared joining an MLM to gambling in Las Vegas.
Okay, I like a good Vegas analogy.
Well, we all know the casino has an edge, right?
Right.
The house always wins in the long run.
It's true.
But if you go to Vegas and you play slots or you play roulette, something like 97% of people lose money over time, which means you have about a 3% chance of walking away a winner.
Not great odds, but it happens. You hear stories of people hitting jackpots.
It happens. But in an MLM, based on Taylor's data, it's a 99.9% loss rate, which means, statistically speaking, you have a significantly better chance of financial success by taking your life savings to Vegas, walking up to a roulette table, and putting it all on a single number.
That is insane, because when I go to Vegas, at least I know I'm gambling.
Yeah.
I get a free drink, I see a show, it's entertainment. I don't take out a second mortgage on my house because I think I'm investing in a business.
Exactly. The deception is the key difference. A casino doesn't tell you that pulling the handle on a slot machine is a legitimate career path that's going to allow you to retire early, and MLM does.
Let's look at some of the specific company data, because I don't want anyone to think this is just theoretical. We've got some numbers here from Amway over in the UK.
We do. And this is powerful because it wasn't an independent researcher. The UK government itself investigated Amway, and they found that only 10%, just 1 in 10 of Amway's agents in Britain made any profit whatsoever.
Any profit at all.
Any profit at all. But here's the statistic from that report that really blew my mind. Less than 1 in 10 agents had ever sold a single item to an actual retail customer.
Wait, hold on. Say that again. If 90% of the salespeople aren't selling any products to customers, then who is buying all the products?
The salespeople are. The distributors themselves. They are buying the products to qualify for their commission checks, or because they're told they need to be a product of the product. This just reinforces that core idea. In an MLM, the distributor is the real customer.
So you're the end user. You just don't realize it because they've sold you on the idea that you're a business owner.
Correct. We also have some leaked data from a company called Fortune High-Tech Marketing. Now, this one is interesting because they were eventually shut down by regulators, which means we got a real look at their internal books.
The real numbers.
Real numbers. And they showed that 30% of their representatives made $0, nothing. And of the 70% who made something, the majority, 54% of them, made an average of just $93 a month.
$93 a month. And that's gross, right? That's before you subtract any expenses.
That is gross income.
Yeah.
Before you subtract the cost of the starter kit, the marketing materials, the gas money to drive to meetings, the fees for your personal sales website, all of it.
So if you're making $93 a month, but you're spending $100 a month on business expenses, you are literally paying for the privilege of working for them.
A 2018 poll of over 1,000 MLM sellers confirmed this exact thing. It found that the majority of them made less than 70 cents per hour.
70 cents an hour? You could make more money looking for loose change in your couch cushions.
You absolutely could. And looking for change in the couch cushions doesn't require you to alienate all of your friends and family in the process.
So this is the question that just keeps coming back to me. If the math is so terrible, if the odds are literally worse than a Vegas casino, how did this industry grow into a multi-billion-dollar global juggernaut? I mean, where did it even come from?
It's a great question. And to understand the present, we really have to look back at the history. The roots of this industry go way back to the 1920s and 30s. You had these pioneering companies like the California Vitamin Company.
Which became Neutralite, right?
It later became Neutralite, which was eventually bought by Amway. And you also had the California Perfume Company, which everyone now knows as Avon.
Avon is such a classic brand. My grandmother sold Avon. It always seemed so, I don't know, normal, harmless.
And for a very long time it was. Companies like Avon and also Tupperware, they were primarily what we would call direct selling companies. And this is a really important distinction to make.
Why?
In traditional direct selling, the focus is almost entirely on the product. I buy a lipstick at wholesale, I sell it to my neighbor at retail, I keep the profit. It's a single-level transaction.
Right. There's no pyramid, there's no downline. It's just a salesperson selling a thing.
Exactly. But over the last few decades, that model has shifted dramatically. The Direct Selling Association, or DSA, is the main trade group that represents all these companies. In 1990, only about 25% of the DSA's member companies used a multi-level compensation plan. Most were still just single-level direct sellers.
Okay, so as recently as 1990, the pyramid structure was still the minority model.
A small minority.
Yeah.
But fast forward to 2009. By then, that number had completely flipped. 99.6% of all sellers represented by the DSA were participating in a multi-level model.
Wow, so the entire industry transformed.
It did. Even the legacy companies, the ones you mentioned like Avon and Tupperware, they eventually introduced their own multi-level compensation plans to compete.
Why, though? Was it just pure greed?
I'd say it was efficiency. From the corporation's perspective, the recruitment model is incredibly efficient and lucrative. In a normal business, if I want to expand my sales force, I have to go out and hire people. I have to interview them, train them, pay them a salary, pay for their benefits. It's really expensive.
Sure.
In an MLM, the sales force recruits itself. It grows virally, exponentially, and not only do I not have to pay them a salary, they actually pay me for a starter kit just for the right to start working.
It's genius in a really dark way. You're crowdsourcing your labor costs, and you're turning your entire workforce into your biggest customer base.
And as this model took over, the industry realized it had a branding problem. People started to catch on to the pyramid shape. They started getting suspicious. So you see the rise of what I call semantic games.
Oh, right. They're constantly changing the terminology.
Constantly. To distance themselves from the fraud accusations. So it's not a pyramid scheme, no, it's interactive distribution.
Or relationship marketing. I've heard that one.
Social retail.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter what you call it. If the compensation plan pays you more for recruiting people than it does for selling a product to the public, the underlying mechanics are still the same.
Which brings us right to the elephant in the room, the legal question. I think a lot of our listeners are probably sitting there thinking, okay, if this is such a scam, why is it legal? Why are these companies publicly traded on the stock market? Why do they sponsor sports stadiums?
That is the billion-dollar question. And the answer is found in a very specific, and I would argue very, very gray area of the law. Here in the United States, the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, is the main regulator. And their official stance is, well, it's nuanced.
Nuance is a very polite word for confusing.
It is confusing, but the core legal distinction boils down to this. What is the primary source of the company's revenue?
Oh.
If the money is made primarily from recruiting new distributors, from selling starter kits and training materials, then it is likely an illegal pyramid scheme. But if the money is made primarily from sales to the public, to actual end users of the product, then it's considered a legitimate multi-level marketing business.
Okay, on the surface, that seems pretty straightforward. Are you selling products to real people, or are you just shuffling money around inside a closed loop of recruits?
Right. But here's the loophole. It's a massive loophole, and it's called internal consumption.
Internal consumption. Okay, let's unpack that term.
The MLM companies make a very clever argument. They say, hey, our distributors are the public. They are our most passionate customers. They love the product so much they buy it for themselves and their families every single month.
So when a distributor is forced to buy, say, $500 worth of vitamins just to qualify for their commission check,
the company counts that as a legitimate retail sale.
even if they don't actually need $500 worth of vitamins, even if those bottles just pile up in their garage.
Exactly. This is what creates the garage qualified phenomenon. People buying huge amounts of inventory they have no hope of selling, just to maintain their rank in the pyramid. The FTC actually issued an advisory on this back in 2004.
And what did they say?
They said that internal consumption doesn't automatically make a plan illegal. However, the revenue generated from it can't be incidental to the right to participate in the business opportunity.
Meaning you have to be buying the product because you genuinely want the product, not because you're essentially buying your way up the pyramid.
That's the idea. But proving that intent in a court of law, proving why someone bought a box of shake mix, is incredibly difficult for prosecutors. It's a very, very high legal bar to clear.
But they have cleared it sometimes, right? There have been major cases.
There have. The most pivotal case in the history of this industry was the FTC versus Amway back in 1979. It was a massive legal battle. The FTC went after Amway, accusing them of being an illegal pyramid scheme.
And what was the outcome? Who won?
Well, it was a mixed verdict, but ultimately it was a huge victory for the MLM industry. The judge ruled that Amway was not per se an illegal pyramid scheme.
Wow.
But they were found guilty of other things like price fixing and, importantly, making exaggerated and misleading income claims. The core business model itself, though, survived that legal challenge.
So that 1979 ruling basically gave the entire industry the green light.
It gave them the blueprint for how to operate legally. The judge pointed to certain safeguards that Amway had in its policies. For example, the 70% rule, which theoretically required distributors to sell 70% of their inventory each month before ordering more.
Okay.
So the industry lawyers all said, okay, great. If we just write these rules into our handbooks, then we're legal.
Even if nobody actually follows or enforces the rules in practice.
That is the catch. The enforcement of these internal rules is virtually non-existent. But the FTC does still go after companies that they feel cross the line too far. You had a company called Vema.
Oh, the energy drink one. They were huge on college campuses for a while.
They were. And the FTC shut them down precisely because their focus was so clearly on recruiting broke college students, not on selling energy drinks to the public. And Fortune High-Tech Marketing, the company with those terrible numbers we mentioned earlier, they were officially ruled to be a pyramid scheme. The FTC shut them down, liquidated their assets, and ended up mailing checks totaling $3.7 million to the victims of the scheme.
So justice is possible. It just seems like you have to be incredibly blatant about it to finally get caught.
You do.
Yeah.
And usually by the time the regulators catch up, the damage has been done. The money has already been transferred up the pyramid, and the people at the bottom are just left with debt and a garage full of products.
And it's not just financial debt, is it? This brings us to the whole cultural side of things.
Yeah.
When you read accounts from people who've left these organizations, you see the word cult come up over and over again.
You see it a lot. And it's not just angry ex-members using that word. Serious academic researchers use it as well. There was a fascinating article by a scholar named Walter J. Carl in the Western Journal of Communication. He specifically discussed how MLM organizations are often described as cults.
And what were his reasons?
He pointed to a pattern of deceptive behavior, the use of what he called evangelical discourse, and the exploitation of personal relationships for financial gain.
Evangelical discourse. Like they're preaching a gospel of wealth.
That's a perfect way to put it. There's a very strong us versus them mentality that's fostered. If you're the group, you're positive, you're a winner, you're an entrepreneur. If you criticize the group, or if you decide to quit,
Then you're a loser, a quitter.
a quitter, or, and this is my favorite term they use, you're a dream stealer.
A dream stealer. Wow. So if your spouse comes to you and says, hey, honey, we've lost $2,000 on this so far, maybe we should stop. The MLM training tells you that your own spouse is stealing your dreams.
Exactly. They instruct you to distance yourself from negativity and from anyone who doesn't support your journey. It creates this intense social isolation. It insulates the member from the very people, friends, family who might be able to help them see the reality of the financial situation.
It weaponizes your most personal relationships. Which, I mean, it brings us right back to that very first text message we talked about. The entire business model requires you to monetize your friends.
It absolutely does. You are taught to view every single person you know, your mother, your best friend from college, your dentist, as a potential lead, a potential recruit.
Yeah.
It fundamentally commodifies human connection.
And speaking of culture, we have to talk about geography. Because there is one specific place in the United States that is widely known as the unofficial world capital of MLMs.
Utah.
Utah. I've heard this over and over. Why Utah?
Well,
What is it about that state?
It's a true statistical anomaly. Utah has more multi-level marketing companies per capita than any other state in the country. It is home to some of the absolute giants of the industry. Nu Skin, doTERRA, Unique, Young Living. The list goes on and on.
But is there a reason for it? A specific cultural driver?
Researchers point to the very high population of members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. There are several cultural factors there that seem to create a sort of perfect storm for MLM businesses to thrive.
Okay, let's break those down. What are they?
Well, first you have the return missionary demographic. You have thousands of young men and women who have spent 2 years of their lives knocking on doors, dealing with constant rejection, and learning how to sell a message, often in a foreign language.
That makes so much sense. They are quite literally the most well-trained, resilient, cold-calling sales force you could ever ask for.
They don't hear the word no in the same way that most people do.
Yeah.
Second, there's a very strong cultural philosophy of self-reliance and being industrious. And third, you have more traditional gender roles. So you have a large population of highly educated, very capable mothers who want to stay at home with their children, but also want to contribute to the family income. The MLM pitch of work from your phone, part-time hours, and be your own boss is just perfectly tailored to that demographic.
I have heard the satirical nickname they have for it. Mormons losing money.
Yes, that is the joke, unfortunately. But it really highlights how deeply ingrained this business model has become in that specific community. It's a form of affinity fraud, where you're more likely to trust someone and their business pitch simply because they're part of your social or religious group.
So that's the U.S. perspective, but this is a global industry. And when you look outside of the U.S., the official reaction to MLMs can be very, very different.
Drastically different. Let's start with China.
China is not exactly known for its light-touch approach to regulation.
Not at all. And back in 1998, China banned multi-level marketing entirely, outright ban. They cited concerns about social and economic disruption. They created a specific regulation called the Prohibition of Chuangxiao.
Chuangxiao, what does that translate to?
It basically means pyramid selling. Under current Chinese law, direct sales are still permitted. You can sell lipstick door to door, but having downlines is completely illegal. If you are earning money from the recruitment of others, you are breaking the law.
So they surgically separated the legitimate selling from the scheme part of the business?
They did. The Chinese government viewed these pyramid structures as a serious threat to social order. And they weren't wrong about the potential for real harm. There have been numerous reports of physical danger. Volunteers in China who try to rescue people from these illegal schemes have actually been physically attacked.
Wow, that's a level of intensity you don't really associate with, selling essential oils.
It just shows how desperate and trapped people can become when they're caught in these high-pressure financial groups that have all the hallmarks of a cult.
What about other parts of the world? We've got a note here about Saudi Arabia and Islamic law.
Yes, and this is fascinating. Many prominent Islamic jurists have issued fatwas, which are formal religious rulings, declaring that MLM trade is haram. It's prohibited.
And what are the grounds for that ruling?
There are two main reasons. The first is a concept called gharar, which means deception or uncertainty. The jurists argue that the promise of easy wealth is fundamentally deceptive because, as we've seen from the statistics, almost no one actually achieves it.
Okay, that tracks one-to-one with the data we looked at earlier.
And the second reason is a concept called riba, which is the prohibition of usury or interest. They argue that the structure, where you pay an entry fee in the hopes of getting more money back without engaging in real trade, it too closely resembles gambling and interest. It violates the core principles of fair exchange in Islamic finance.
That's really interesting. So it's a moral and ethical objection as much as it is a financial one.
It is. And then you have a country like Bangladesh, which just banned all domestic and foreign MLM trade, period, in 2015. So while the U.S. has taken this regulate and monitor approach, many other countries look at this model and just say, no, this is fundamentally predatory, and we're not allowing it in our country.
It really highlights how the American approach seems to prioritize the freedom to do business, even if that business is, well, extremely questionable.
The philosophy is caveat emptor. Let the buyer beware.
So if we zoom out here, we've looked at the mechanics, the math, the law, the global reaction. It feels like the central tension, the core conflict, is between what the business says it is and what the business actually is.
That is the heart of the paradox. The business says it's about selling amazing products, but the math of the compensation plan says it's about recruiting investors into a pyramid.
The business says it's about achieving financial freedom.
But the statistics say it's a near certain guarantee of financial loss.
And the business says it's about building a supportive community. But the stories from people who've left say it's about commodifying your friends and isolating you from your family.
I honestly think that's the most damaging part. Well, we could talk about someone losing $500 on a starter kit, and that hurts. That's real money. But losing the trust of your entire community, that's a much, much higher cost. When you start to look at your best friend and all you can see is a dollar sign, something is fundamentally broken.
As we wrap this up, what's the one final thought we should leave people with? We've seen the damage these structures can do.
I think the most important question you can ask yourself, or you can ask anyone who approaches you with one of these opportunities, is this. If a business model requires you to turn your friends into your customers, and then immediately turn those customers into your direct competitors by recruiting them, what is that business actually selling? Is it selling a product, or is it selling you?
That is a heavy question. If you are the one funding the commission checks of all the people above you through your own purchases, then you are the product.
Exactly. The money isn't coming from the magic of the free market. It's coming from your bank account and the bank accounts of all the other hopeful recruits at the bottom.
Well, that is a sobering thought, but a really important one. We hope this deep dive has given all of you the tools to look at these opportunities with a much clearer, more critical eye.
Remember, knowledge really is your best defense against a slick sales pitch.
Absolutely. And if it sounds too good to be true, ask to see the official income disclosure statement.
And maybe, keep your day job.
Relax. Yes, definitely keep your day job. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious and stay skeptical.